Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island released in 1998. It was developed by veterans of the franchise, including the director Jim Stenstrom and screenwriter Glenn Leopold. It was the beginning of a new era, heralding in yearly releases of Scooby-Doo films that have continued to this day, as well as starting the Real Monsters quadrilogy, which all featured real, supernatural threats. It's generally regarded as one of the best films in the franchise, and a direct sequel was released 20 years later. Davis Joyce spearheaded the project from the Warner Bros. Side, who was in charge of Hanna-Barbera. The franchise had been in a bit of a lull, with the last show ending in 1991, and the last significant project was the TV movie Scooby-Doo and Arabian Nights in 1994. Zombie Island went into development with relatively little oversight, and was planned to be a one-off, allowing huge freedom in how the story was told. One of the central conceits, that there would be actual zombies, was a point of contention for Leopold, who believed it was contrary to the franchise's essence. He was overruled by Stenstrom and Doy, however, and the film progressed with an initial concept from an unlikely place: SWAT cats. Leopold had previously developed a script entitled The Curse of Cataluna for the show, but was never finished. This is where the werecat idea came from. A Japanese studio, Mook Animation, were contracted to assist with the film. They had developed a number of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles-inspired animation, like Biker Mice from Mars and Street Sharks, and of course, Stripperella, a Stanley and Pamela Anderson joint. They would help with all 4 of the Real Monster films. The initial plan was to use as many of the original voice actors as possible, but problems quickly arose. Casey Kasem, the voice of Shaggy, had become vegetarian and insisted that Shaggy would not eat meat or meat products. Due to having already animated a scene involving shrimp, the team tried to reel in the stipulation. Kasem refused, and Billy West would take over the role for the film. Scott Ennis would take over Scooby's voice, as the previous actor had passed just before production would begin. Heather North briefly voiced Daphne, but was swiftly replaced by Mary Kay Burgum, who would voice the role in the 2 subsequent films. B.J. Ward would take over the role of Velma, as the previous actress had retired. Finally, Frank Welker would be the only one of the original cast to stay in the role, and he has continued to this day. That's over 50 years of voicing the same character, a feat likely never to be replicated. Other famous voices in the cast include Tara Strong, Jim Cummings, and Mark Hamill, indicating the scale of production. While there has never been a publicly released budget, there was allegedly a $50 million marketing push by Warner Bros., despite not getting a theatrical release. This included tie-ins with Soup, SpaghettiOs, Wendy's, Lego, and Cartoon Network, as well as NASCAR. Onto the film itself. Beware, there will be spoilers for this 25-year-old film.
No, it's not true. That's impossible!
Overall, it's just fantastic, with a good mix of action, horror, and comedy. The animation is a marked improvement from the older series, with some anime influences seeping in due to the assistance of Mook. There is decent mystery here, albeit a little heavy on the red herrings. It is by far the darkest of any Scooby-Doo film, including multiple explicit death scenes and some fairly grisly effects. The film begins with a classic Scooby-Doo mystery, the gang wandering around an abandoned castle while being chased by a green moat monster. All of the creature designs in the film are top-notch, being both relatively original and interesting looking. There is a brief montage featuring 4 different disguises, and each would fit perfectly in the original series. The opening chase has a remix of the classic theme song, and ends with an expected bit of slapstick and an unmasking, revealing another common trope in the franchise: counterfeiting. It's then shown that this is all a flashback, a story that Daphne is telling on a talk show. While it's unclear exactly how much time has passed, the gang are now adults with jobs, and featuring slightly updated wardrobes, especially Fred and Daphne, who both work in TV. Velma runs a horror-focused bookshop, and Shaggy and Scooby work customs at an airport, before quickly being fired for eating all the contraband. While it's still kid-friendly, this could obviously be taken as them being fired for smoking some other illicit substances. The gang then reconnect and go on a tour of Louisiana, looking for real ghosts or monsters, encountering a number of haunted sites. This is a fun montage and helps establish the characters a bit more. Daphne is upset they can't find the actual haunts, but Velma just seems happy to be solving mysteries again. The rest are sort of along for the ride. We're then introduced to Lena on the streets of New Orleans, and the setup for the film is finally done, taking a little over 10 minutes. The gang is then introduced to the ferrymen, alligators, and snakebite Scruggs, a Crocodile Dundee XP voiced by Mark Hamill. He's unfortunately a bit of a wasted character, with no actual influence or relevance to the main plot. He and his pig show up a few times, but he might have worked better as a harbinger, warning of cats or voodoo, some kind of clue to the greater plot instead of just being there. The gang arrives at the mansion and are introduced to the remainder of the cast, Bo the gardener and the lady of the house, Simone, as well as her cats, which Scooby has a fairly aggressive reaction to. This is used as a way to move Scooby, and by extension Shaggy, around the island to discover various plot elements. Well, there's a bit of an over-reliance on it. The alternative is random spooks, so it does just fine. The first supernatural occurrence is a hastily scrawled "Get Out" carved into the walls of the kitchen. It's soon revealed that it's caused by the ghost of Captain Moonscar, who gave the island its name. He's also a skeleton and a zombie at various points, traveling all around the undead state of being. There's a bit of exposition here, although it feels relatively natural, and even the ending monologue doesn't feel like an info dump. After some misadventures from Scooby, they stumble upon a pit, which is never properly explained, and the reanimation of a zombie in front of them. The effect is sick, and used a few times throughout the film, and it's always a treat. In general, the zombies are visually interesting, as they've been the victims of the island for hundreds of years. This means that in addition to pirates, there are also guys in suits, fishermen, tourists, and the always classic Confederate soldiers. The last one is a point of contention, as the film makes great efforts to point out how the zombies are the good guys, cutting from that line to a Confederate soldier. I understand that it's set in the South, in Louisiana, but this is the one area where no oversight actually hurt the film. They could have been Union soldiers or even redcoats, literally anything but the guys who fought for slavery, being portrayed as saviors. Scooby and Shaggy manage to get away, and after some brief clue searching, there's some fairly amusing meta jokes, with an always classic suitcase of one outfit, and Fred just missing an ascot. Overall, it's reverence for the original designs and ideas while still updating it for modern audiences. Velma really should have taken notes. There's some awkward moments at the dinner as Fred flirts with Lena and Daphne asks about Bo. It's sort of implied they're in a relationship, but never stated, and both snip at each other in a sort of uncomfortable way. The gang heads out into the night, and again have an amusing scene with a zombie, trying to pull its head off. More jabs from Daphne, before the whole thing just pops off, and they toss it around. With only a slight change in tone and visuals, this could be pure terror, but it's treated with a comic air, and the film is all the better for it. It's not about inserting jokes and scary moments, but building up the atmosphere that allows for comfortable horror, a delicate balance the zombie island just gets right. A fantastic song that accentuates a musical action montage. Nothing but good things to say here, where again the animation, writing, and designs all come together into a beautiful melting pot. This ends the second act, with Shaggy and Scooby again stumbling into an important clue, this time voodoo dolls. Shortly, the true mystery of the film is revealed, that the zombies and ghosts were trying to warn the gang about Lena and Simone, were peasants in a small community hundreds of years ago. Then pirates came, and forced all the settlers into the bayou, where they were devoured by alligators. They prayed to their cat god, who gave them supernatural abilities, which they used to murder all the pirates. Then they've been draining the life from people for hundreds of years, every harvest moon, for a yearly sacrifice. Much of this is told through flashbacks featuring a sepia tone, which works fairly well. During this, the pair also transform, first into hybrid cat-human, then the full monstrous visage, with a sanitized American Werewolf-inspired scene. They're then defeated by the voodoo dolls, which are another element never fully explained, and they melt into skeletons. Again, it's a great visual, and it happens to all the zombies as well, for a suitably epic finale, despite no real violence. There is a small denouement where it's revealed Bo was a cop trying to find the missing bodies, and Velma has a huge crush on him. Scooby finally makes peace with the cats, and everyone lives happily ever after. Well, except for the werecats. Overall, the film is a blast, one of the best pieces of media in the franchise. In the tier list, it's clearly the top of A tier, with an interesting new twist on the formula, fantastic animation and monster design, and good comedy that isn't overbearing. Going to the maps, the only new location is Louisiana, with a brief tour of the state. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you could, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me out. Also check out my video on the sequel, which will go up very soon. Be well.